Kind of feel a little bit bad about us taking all Brother Moore's time. He's been very, very generous with us. Every time I've gone to a church where he's pastoring, he's divided time with me, and just very, very generous. My son this morning, I was telling Brother Dallas this morning, I hadn't seen him in, 13, 14, 15 years, something, I don't know. It's been a long time. Last time I saw him was at Mossy Grove, and he came on a Wednesday night from Kentucky down to Morgan County, Tennessee. And that's rough. And it came down and preached for us that night, and it was.
I think that was the second night. I tried to come down one Wednesday night, and the meeting was dismissed. Everybody was on the front porch when we got there.
Oh, okay.
And then we came back, and you may not have been there the first night.
I probably wasn't. I must not have been. But it's been a long time, man, and immediately felt love. He's just really good people, and thank God for them. My subject this morning is home. If you can't go anywhere else, you can go home. Amen. And if you're hurting, you want to go home. If you're in distress, if you're we sing a song, "When the storms of life are raging, stand by me," and the last of that verse is, "Thou who rulest wind and water, stand by me." And sometimes the world is tossing me like a ship upon the sea, and when it does, I want to go home. Even an animal, most of us have had dogs or cats or whatever. If that animal gets out and gets hurt, let's go home. Home is where you can heal, where you can get comfort, and there's generally warmth, there's generally food and clothing and warmth and acceptance and love. When you go home, it's just a good place to be. I was saying, home is where the heart is. I think you can also say heart is where the home is. Jesus told us one time that he said, "Wheresoever a man's treasure is, there will his heart be also." And I don't know about y'all, but I love my home. God has been good to me and grant me a nice, comfortable home. A lot of folks like to go out camping and everything. Well, I don't care a thing about going out and laying on the ground. I've got a bed at home and a bedroom and all the conveniences of home. I like being at home. And the same is true for a church home. And the same is true for our heavenly home. There is a song that, sadly, it's not in these books. It's in the a little Goebel book that they use up in the mountains in Kentucky and Tennessee and Virginia. And it's number 277 in this Goebel book. If y'all will kind of permit me, I'd like to sing that song. A home in heaven, what a joyful thought, as a poor man toils in his weary lot, his heart oppressed and with anguish riven from his home below to a home in heaven. A home in heaven as a sufferer lies on his bed of pain and uplifts his eyes to that bright home. What a joy is given with the blessed thought of a home in heaven. A home in heaven when our pleasures fade and our wealth and fame in the dust are laid, and our strength decays, and our health is riven. We are happy still with our home in heaven. A home in heaven when the sinner mourns, and with contrite heart to the Savior turns. Oh, then what bliss in that heart forgiven does the hope inspire of a home in heaven. A home in heaven when our friends are fled, to the cheerless home of the motoring dead. We wait in hope of the promise given. We will meet again in our home in heaven. The older I get, that last couple of verses kind of applies. The older I get, the fewer of the folks I've known, the more and more of the loved ones and kinfolk and church friends and so forth pass away. And I know that one day I will too. And I do dread dying. I don't fear it. I don't remember if I said this here or not last time I was here, but since Jesus died and Jesus has been through the grave, He sweetened it and it's okay now. I dread it. Now I've got a 16-year-old boy, a grandson that I've been raising since he's 3 years old, and I got a boy that's 9. His birthday's coming up January 5th. He'll soon be 10. My stepson, and I've been asking God to let me get those 2 boys raised before I go home. But I do want to go home. There are times in this life when we have trials and tribulations and sorrows and pain. And sometimes our best friend will betray us. Sometimes a loss of a job or income, or sometimes a wife will betray us, or a husband will betray us. There are all kinds of things in this world that will cause you grief and sorrow and pain and discomfort, and you want relief from it. And we know that one day we're going to get relief from that. Whatever it is, we're going to get relief from that. One of these days we're going to die, and it's all that's going to be over with. But sometimes we're in this life, it gets so hard. Life can be so hard and so painful. And sometimes we want to go on home. Like we have a natural home, and sometimes we will go to that home when we're feeling problems. In this life, it seems sometimes that it's just everything around us, and there's no comfort to be found, and so we want to go to that home to escape from that. There are times that I have been either in preaching or hearing preacher, and even in singing, that I've been so lifted up that had nothing to do with pains or problems of this world, but it had to do with, I want to be there. I won't go home because there's something there that we can't get here. We get just a little taste right here. We get the earnest of our inheritance. The earnest of that inheritance is a time when we can worship God and serve Him and love one another and come together in peace and harmony and love of God and worship of God. Our time here on this earth, our purpose is supposed to be for worshiping God. There are folks who talk, I'm trying to find myself. I'm searching for, people search for happiness all their lifetimes and can't find it. Solomon is a good example of that. He searched for happiness in everything. He tried wine. He tried building for you. He built palaces and gardens and so forth. Men singers and women singers and servants, and had all these things, all the kinds of, all the natural things that you can have. And he decided it's all vanity, Brother Dallas.
Yes.
He said it's all vanity. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity of preaching. He had left his first love, Brother Mark. His first love was that when God had raised him up to the throne, he made 1,000 burnt offerings to God. He got on his knees before the people and prayed to God and so forth. And he pleased God. You know, without faith it's impossible to please God, but with faith it's possible to please God. And I believe that man had faith, and he asked God. He prayed God, and God came to him and asked him, what do you want? Essentially, you know, just what you name it, and I'll give you what you want. And you know, we all have this old selfish sin nature, you know. And I want riches, I want happiness, I want the lives of my enemies, and I want this and that and the other. And Solomon, sincerely at that point, he said, "Just give me wisdom to judge this thy so great people. Thou hast called me and placed me on the throne of David, my father." And I'm a child. I know how to go out and come in. And I need wisdom. I know how to judge. And God blessed him. He said, well, since you've asked this unselfish request, and haven't asked for lives of your enemies and riches and so forth, you're going to get your wisdom, but you're also going to get all these things you didn't ask for. That we all want those things. Don't we all want to have money and so forth and comfort in life, and we want an easy life and so forth. We want God gave him all these things, and then he left his first love. And how he left his first love, he went off and started multiplying wives to himself. It's my understanding he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and how could he remember their names? I mean, you know. That's a different woman for every day for nearly 3 whole years, a different woman every day. It just makes no sense to me. I don't see. And he left his first love, and he let his wives turn his heart away from God, and he built altars to these different gods and so forth, and he suffered for it. If you're a child of God, you're supposed to serve him. And if you don't serve him, he'll make you suffer for it. He will chastise you for that. At the very end, you go through the book of Ecclesiastes, and he tells all he's done, and all how he's searching for happiness. And I used an illustration one time. It's like a dog. He's trying to find happiness in life like a dog chasing his tail. And I had a friend one time tell me, "Oh, Roger, I had a dog call his tail one time." Oh, great, Brian, ruined my illustration. And I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Oh, he yelped and let it go." So, you know, that he improved it, you know. That thing that you think is going to make you so happy that you're chasing all your life, if you ever get it, it ain't what makes you happy. You know what makes you happy? Solomon found out what makes you happy. He said, fear God and keep his commandments. He said, at the very end, the last verse of the last chapter of Ecclesiastes, he said, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. He said, I've talked all this time. Let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. If you want to be happy, don't hunt for happiness. Search for how to best serve God. You serve God, and I promise you, you'll be happy in this life if you'll serve God. You'll find happiness in it. There's another illustration that a preacher told one time, and I'll try to tell it kind of like he did. There's this old preacher, I don't know how much text I'm going to read or anything, but I hope that what I'm saying is going to make you understand that this is not our home here. We have dual citizenship, you know. We have an earthly address, but we have a citizenship in heaven. And we will lose that earthly address one time. We're never going to lose that home in heaven. That's ours. It's ours by inheritance. And it's an inheritance, something that you get not because you've believed or accepted or done this or that or the other, or prayed through or been baptized or held out faithfully in. An inheritance is something you got because you were born. And you don't get born, you are born. That's something that you don't, not something you do, it's something that happens to you. No one, I think I said this last time I was here, no woman ever offered birth to a child. She gives birth, and no child ever accepted birth. He receives birth. There's a difference between, the giving and receiving, that applies to birth, but offering and accepting doesn't apply to birth. Not natural and not spiritual. Anyway, this illustration, there was this old preacher back in the days when there wasn't much car availability and so forth, and they went by horse and buggy, by train or whatever. This old preacher had gone. He was an old widower, and he had gone by train, filled some preaching appointments, and had a wonderful time and everything. And you know what happened to Elijah when he faced down the 450 prophets of Baal? He had this great victory and so forth, and he was up on the mountaintop, and we have the valleys too, and he came down into the valley, and that old wicked friend said, I'm going to kill you for what you've done. And he ran scared, he ran off ahead and said, oh Lord, just take my life, let me go, I'm not better than my father. Feeling sorry for himself. Do we ever get to feeling sorry for ourselves? Well, this old preacher, he got on his train and came home, and at his stop, there was a great, big, huge crowd gathered there. There was a celebrity on that train. It wasn't for him. And he got off that train and got down in the crowd and looking, tried to find a familiar face. And found no familiar face. He walked his way through the crowd, and nobody there to greet him. Well, he walked on home through the pathways and so forth, and got home and didn't bother to put any lights on or anything. Just sat down in a chair and sat there all lonely. And just imagine the feeling there. Nobody home, had nobody there, just him by himself, and he sat there, and I'm sure I'd be feeling pretty sorry for myself. And it's almost like he heard this voice said, you're not home yet. And when we get to feeling that way here, just remember, you're not home yet. We've got a home to go to one of these days that is far beyond anything we have here. I guess I'll read just a little bit here. This is King David. Well, before he was king, this is 1 Samuel chapter 18. 1 Samuel chapter 18. This is after he killed the giant Goliath. And old Goliath, he was a huge guy, 6 cubits in a span, and cubits from here to here, and a span is from here to here, a cubit ranged anywhere from around 18 to 21 inches, and 18 inches would make him 9 feet 6, and 21 inches put him pretty close to 11 feet tall. So he was somewhere, I think, between 10 and 11 feet tall. He'd have to duck walk to get through the door. He was that kind of, and like back many years ago, my former son-in-law, first time I met him, he was 6 feet 8. And I looked up at him and I thought, boy, I hope I don't even get mad at him. I didn't want to have tangled with somebody that big. Can you imagine somebody that's 10 or 11 feet tall? And little David, in my understanding, he wasn't much bigger, if any bigger than I am. And he was just a little guy. Looked up this guy that was right close to twice his height. And this huge man, and he wasn't shaking his boots. Goliath one ought to have been shaking his boots, because David didn't come in the power of man. He came in the power of God. He came with God behind him. He destroyed that old giant. And, here was this Saul. Saul was head and shoulders taller than anybody else in Israel, as I understand it according to scriptures. And God first gave them a king after their own heart. And then when he removed Saul, then he gave him a king after God's own heart. Which one was the better king? You know which one's the better king. That little old guy that God chose, that was a man after God's own heart. And so when God chose Saul and installed him as king, well, everybody was looking up at him and saying, what this great man, they expected he would take care of them, protect them. When Goliath came along, he was a whole lot bigger than Saul. Saul was looking down at everybody else. Well, this giant, he was looking down at Saul. So this great big huge man, and David went out to face him, and everybody else, when they'd show up and challenge him, they'd all run. They all ran and hid, but David said, let me at him. And he took a stone from his shepherd bag, and he slung that stone, and it hit that man. And I believe God guided that stone. I don't believe God guides every stone or every arrow or every bullet, but I believe he guides some of them, and he guided that stone. It hit him right in the forehead, and that old giant hit the ground face first. And there wasn't a sword in that little shepherd boy's hand. So he went over there and stood on top of that old giant and drew his sword out of him and cut his head off. He said, this is what God can do. He said, I'm doing the same thing to this man that I did to the lion and the bear out there. Now here was David, that he had been accustomed to being at home with his parents and so forth. Well, after all this happened, and they conversed a little bit, and starting the 18th chapters of 1 Samuel says, and it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan and David, soul of David and Jonathan loved. I'm sorry. The end of speaking, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. These two men immediately became like brothers, closer than brothers. And at one point it said that they loved each other with the love passing the love of a woman. In other words, they were so close, brothers in Christ, and it was they were closer than a lot of natural brothers. And it says the second verse, and Saul took him, that's David, took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. He had this great victory over Goliath, and now he can't go home anymore. You know, my wife told me when she married her first husband, and he was a scoundrel and so forth. I won't go through all that. She put him away because he was running around, and it was horrible. She said when after she was first married, they set up housekeeping, and she missed home. She missed her parents' house. And you know, they visited before after that, and we visited our parents' houses and so forth after we're married and all. But it's never the same again. We're visiting there; it's not home. And you know that's the way it is with a woman when she marries. And with a man, it's the same way. You know, a man is tends to be a little more rebellious and so forth. And I want my own place. I want to be my own boss, and I want to call the shots and so forth. And I don't want to be there. I got to do what they say. I want to go where I can do what I say. Well, I got to do what God says. And if we don't do what God says, we'll be sorry for it. Right. I've been disobedient, and I know you're sorry for it when you're disobedient. But David, it was never the same with him again. He went on. He was never allowed to go home again. And then Saul became jealous of David, and he was chasing him, trying to kill him. And he chased him all over creation. And David had men that kept gathering to him, more and more men gathering to him. And he had a pretty good sized troop, army or whatever. And they were hiding in this cave. Well, Saul was out there hunting him, and Saul went in that same cave, and these men were hiding themselves in the side of the cave, and Saul slept. And David sneaked over and cut off the hem of his robe. And when Saul woke and left the cave, David called to him and said, I got your robe. I could have killed you. Just put this in my words. I could have killed you, but I won't raise my hand against the Lord's anointed, and so forth. And at the end of it, Saul acknowledged that David was going to be king, and so forth. And he made one request. This is 24:21. 1 Samuel 24:21. Swear now, therefore unto me by the Lord, that thou wilt not cut off my seed after me, and that thou wilt not destroy my name out of my father's house. And David sware unto Saul. And Saul went home, but David and his men got him up to the hold. David still couldn't go home. David didn't have a home here on earth till after Saul was dead. Then he was able to have a home on earth again. The time's almost up with illustrations and so forth. In this world, we are ambassadors to Christ. Paul told us that we are ambassadors to Christ, and the churches are embassies. This is sovereign ground. You know, the United States has embassies in a lot of other nations, and that is sovereign ground. That's the United States ground, and you are supposed to be safe, and it's illegal for anybody to bother you in that. You're under the laws of the United States in those embassies and so forth. Well, this is an embassy. The churches are an embassy. It's God's sovereign ground and so forth, and it's a little Bethel spot. It's a little home away from home. And if you can imagine being in some place where maybe in Russia or some place where any place where they don't speak English generally, and you're not around anybody else speaking English, anybody else from America. if you make your way to the embassy, how comforting it would be to find a place where they speak your language. See, we speak the same language here in this church. We know that salvation is by grace. We know that God loved us so much that He wanted the thing done right. And if you want something done right, you do it yourself. God Himself came. God Himself became a man. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, became a man, and He suffered on the cross of Calvary and died and saved us from our sins. And one day we're going to have a home in heaven. We have that home now, and one of these days we're going to be there. Right now we have the earnest of our inheritance, and we have a little embassy here where we come to this little Bethel spot, and we can rejoice together and look to that home in heaven. There was something else that I had wanted to say, and it's left me, and time's up, so I'm going to hush right now. Brother Dallas, may God bless you and lift you up. The spirit and ammunition of the Lord.